Hello, everybody out there in gardening land, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Out Gardener. I'm Greg Dreiss. Well, No Mow May has been around for a few years, and it's starting to meet some resistance as people find out that it's not really the greatest thing for your lawn or wildlife or pollinators as it was thought to be. Simple reason is, and I used an example earlier, I have a lawn that I mow in Catskill, New York, and right next to it, the hippies let their lawn grow wild and didn't mow in May, and it ended up about being 3 feet tall by Memorial Day. Not a single flower in bloom. Meanwhile, the lawn I was doing every 2 weeks at 3.5 to 4 inches had plenty of clover, creeping thyme, those little things called scrambled eggs, an occasional dandelion, and a lot of other things that were in flower. So that's there. So piggybacking on No Mow May is leave the leaves. And again, at first, when you hear what they're saying, let your leaves fall to the ground, leave them there because it's a great place for critters and turtles and lizards and such like that to overwinter. And it also provides a beneficial mulch that feeds your plants, protects plants from cold, and what else is supposed to do? And it's also a good mulch. Well, being more of a realist and not running after every shirt sleeve emotional meme that gets regurgitated on Facebook and other groups, here's a couple reasons why you should not, excuse me, or at least my opinion, why you should not leave your leaves. In a forest, that's how things work. Trees drop their leaves, they decompose, they turn into compost for feeding the trees later on. They give layers of protection for certain animals and little critters and such like that. But when you're in the forest, you've got trees everywhere. So it's not unusual when leaves drop in the forest where there's a bunch of maple trees around that you're going to have 4, 5, 6 inches of mulch, and you're going to have a lot of critters that hang out in the woods, little insects, little bugs, stuff like that. But we're talking about in your lawn. Excuse me. And the same thing just does not occur in your lawn that occurs in the woods. First of all, you've either bought a house or you've built a house, and what do? Sometimes you got to cut down trees. You dig up the soil, you put a lawn in, you plant a few trees, you plant a few shrubs, and then you think that leaving the leaves on the ground, as well as not cutting back your garden, somehow you're going to benefit nature. Well, the fact is, when you destroyed that little piece of nature when you built your house or put in a lawn or purchased a house that somebody else built. It's just a fact of life, and that's how it goes. So because we have a lawn and we have gardens that we have created an artificial environment that is much more of a monoculture than what was there before, especially if you plowed up a field to build your house. What good is it to leave the leaves we have in this artificial environment? So here's the bad things about leaving the leaves. Number one, if you have maple trees in your yard, I'm in the Northeast of the United States, and there's maple trees everywhere. Maple trees, when they drop their leaves, of course, they're all nice and pretty for a while, but if it rains before the leaves have a chance to get all crunchy, they become a matted mess. And who wants to rake up that crap in the spring? Let's say you got a lot of snow over the winter. And even if the leaves did go crunchy, which maple leaves generally don't for quite a while because they tend to get all matty and crap in the yard. And you go out in the spring and you go to clean up your yard in March or April after the snow melted, and now you've got leaves that are a wet, sloppy mess. Not only is that going to be no fun to clean up, but look at the damage they've probably done to your garden already. They've smothered everything. They haven't provided any place for anything to overwinter, especially maple leaves. Oak leaves, that's a different story because they tend to curl up when they get crunchy. Maple leaves don't even curl up when they get crunchy. So it's a mess to clean up. So what else is in there? What else is in your garden when you don't cut back the perennials and flowers and such like that after the frost has killed them back for the season? Well, yeah, you might have a few good bugs hanging out there, but let's look at the bad side. You have bad bugs, not just good ones. Bad fungus, especially with the matted leaves that are now wet. Somebody says they feed the soil. Well, no, they don't, because they take quite a while to break down. They don't break down over the winter when they're frozen. So that's a bunch of poppycock right there. Time to get rid of that nonsense. Fleas and ticks, as well as rodents, are also the foes that take up residence along with whatever good stuff you are thinking is there. Now, if you have a leaf shredder and your leaves are brown and crispy, by all means, crunch them up and make a mulch out of it or compost them. As far as a mulch, just letting the leaves fall on the garden, that's about one of the worst things you can do, especially if you have clay soil, and here's why. What's going to happen is it's called a winter mulch, and the misconception with a winter mulch is it should be put down to keep the ground warm, not in clay soil. You don't need to keep the ground warm. The ground goes dormant. Plants go through a cold period. They have to. If you put a blanket on top of them to keep them warm, they're going to have a much larger chance of actually being affected by the January thaw. January, February, or an early spring thaw in a clay soil pushes the crown of the plant up above the soil level. And then when the ground freezes, the soil goes back down, the crown of the plant stays there, and it gets frost damage by the cold. And if it's a marginal plant, can probably succumb and not come back in the spring. That's on clay soils. So what's a winter mulch for? Yeah, save your leaves for a winter mulch in your perennial garden. That's great, but chop them up first. Don't put them in there full. Just don't leave them around like a lot of people are saying, on your lawn, under your tree, etc., like that. They need to be shredded. They need to be set aside. And then when the ground is frozen, okay, that is when you put the winter insulation on to keep them cold, just like in our houses in the summer. We don't take the insulation out of the walls in the winter. In the summer. It stays there so the air conditioning stays in. And a winter mulch in the garden to keep the ground frozen so your plants don't wake up too soon, because we do have some crazy weather. We can get a nice warm up in April, and then lately we get a mid-frost in May or something, or the January thaw that happens. The whole idea of a winter mulch is to keep plants dormant so they don't wake up too early, and they don't work if they're not shredded. Because if they're shredded, they're going to stay matted down and not provide much of an insulation whatsoever. Whereas if they are chopped up into fine particles and you can spread them around your plants easier without having them cover up everything, you're much better off. So let's get back to the rest of the garden of not cleaning it up. So you've got leaves all over the place that you haven't cleaned up, and you get a nice warm spring. It warms up. They eventually dry out and return to their crunchiness. And then you've got all your flowers and all your vegetables and all your perennials around your house and around your yard that you didn't clean up in the spring. Well, in New York, we have this thing called a burn ban from March 15th until May 15th. And the reason for that is because there's not enough green growth on fields and grasses and such like that. And in the woods, it's all brown. And what is that? That's tinder for fire. That's why there's a burning ban in a lot of states in the early spring, so that you're not out burning your leaves and it gets into the grasses or the field across the street or in the woods, because everything is still dormant. So now you have not only the forest, and if you live in the country like I do, fields and stuff and grasses and forests along the edge of the road and the farms and such like that, and empty lots. You now have all the crap in your yard that you didn't rake up that is now just kindling and tinder for a fire. That's why you should clean your yard up, especially if you live out in the country, so you don't leave kindling wood behind for some idiot that's going to violate the burn ban in his town, and embers come along, and all of a sudden all those leaves that are you left around in your garden and on your lawn because you're basically too lazy to rake them up, is what it comes down to at the end of it, are now a place for fires. Not to mention ticks, fleas, and rodents like rats and mice. Yes, they do live in the country too, that take up places for winter. That is why you should clean up your yard in the fall instead of waiting until spring. Take it for what it's worth. Look at both sides. And when you're seeing these memes on Facebook, count to 3, take a deep breath before you spread them, because remember, there's a good side and a bad side and a lot of different opinions to each of them. And this is my opinion. Clean up your yard. Don't use it as an excuse to be lazy, or worse yet, be all highbrowed and holier than thou because you think you're doing something to save the planet, when in fact, when your house was built and they dug everything up and they put a lawn in, and you go out and you plant a few trees, plant a few flowers here and there, thinking you're creating an environment, it's not the environment that was there before your house was built. That's just the way it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So don't wear it on your shirt sleeve that you're doing something for the environment. If you wanted to leave your leaves and stuff like that around, cut them all down, throw them in piles on the edge of your yard. It'll be a much more inviting place for critters and little animals to take up space. That way they're not around your house, especially the mice and the rats and the bad bugs and the bad fungus. And they're also in a much denser, deeper place, 7 to 8 inches instead of 1 or 2 on your yard or garden that aren't going to do anything. That's another edition of the Inside Out Gardener. We'll be back with a lot more on fall and stuff for the winter. Hope your plants are inside by now, as it is October 20th in upstate New York. It's 57 degrees and it's heavy rain outside today. We're about 10 inches above normal, and we'll talk about that and the damage that can do. All the rain's coming up. For the Inside Out Gardener, I'm your host, Greg Dreiss. You can catch this on Spotify, Google, Amazon, and most other popular podcast platforms. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the garden.